Hello and welcome back to my favorite crafty things for 2018. This is Jennifer McGuire, and today is all about my favorite adhesives and paper. Now, I apologize for not getting this series wrapped up before the holidays, but I have been really sick, and I also have an update over on my blog if you want to check that out. But today we're going to talk mostly about my favorite adhesives, as there have been several new ones that have come out this year that I really like. Now you can head to my blog, which I'll provide a link to below in the description. And on my blog, I have some excellent discount codes, giveaways, and much more information. So let's go ahead and jump into adhesives for today, and then I'll talk a bit about paper. The first adhesive that I fell in love with this year is the Gina K Connect Glue. This glue is the answer to all of my glue prayers, as I finally have a liquid adhesive that dries strong, dries clear, comes out easy, and doesn't clog. Here you can see how easy it is to put down drops of the adhesive, even super tiny little drops. You can put down thick lines of adhesive or super thin lines. I never have problems with this clogging because I put the lid on as soon as I'm done using it. If you do get a clog, which has only happened to me once in all the times I've used it, I just clear the nozzle out with a needle, but it's not something that I ever have any concerns with. You can see how if you put it somewhere and you don't like where you put it, you can wipe it away with your finger. And even if it oozes out like it did here on this pearl, it will dry clear. So I'm using a jewel picker to add little pearls to these little drops, and that little bit of adhesive will hold these little pearls in place. Even when adhering three-dimensional embellishments like this and putting it through the mail, it will hold tight. I find a little goes a long way with this adhesive, so one bottle will last me for quite some time. I also find that I'm using this adhesive more, so I don't use my dry adhesives as much, and those tend to cost more in the long run. Again, I don't have problems with clogging, but let me give you some tips on how to store this product. When I'm not using it, I stand it so the tip is facing up. I just put it in a little organizer in my drawer, so I have it standing like this. Then when it's time to use, I just flip it over, tap the lid against my work surface so that the product all falls to the tip, and then I can start applying it on my paper as needed. Once I'm done, I immediately put the lid back on and store it so the tip is facing up. Now, I have found this also to be an excellent adhesive for adhering intricate die cuts. So like this one, I'm just putting quick tiny dots of adhesive to the back of the die cut, and I can add it wherever I want. And watch this, when I put it down, I have time to wiggle it around until I get it positioned exactly how I want. And then I can leave it to dry, and it dries pretty quickly. So to have that wiggle room, I can make sure things are straight as I adhere them, and I'll show more of that later in this video. Okay, the other adhesive that I fell in love with this year is the Gina K Dot Runner adhesive. I prefer adhesives that put down little dots of adhesive, as you can see here. The reason I like adhesives like this is you can rub the adhesive away if you change your mind. I like to have that flexibility. So here you can see how easily that adhesive rubs off. Now, as I'm gluing things together with this, I have some time to kind of move things around if I'm not happy with it. I just carefully take the pieces apart to move them. But as you leave it to dry, it holds tight, and I don't have to worry about anything falling off as it goes through the mail. This is a permanent adhesive. But there you can see the great option of moving it and removing the adhesive if need be. I like that this product is small and fits in my hand nicely and is lightweight. That way I don't have some big adhesive gun that's always in the way on my desk. This is so easy to use, and a little goes a long way. Another great thing about this particular adhesive is that refills are available. You just open it up, and you can easily take a refill and pop it in place. There's no effort required. It just fits right into it, and then you close it, and you're ready right away to apply adhesive. And as you can see, there are 2 refills in one pack. I just put a little bit of this in the 4 corners of whatever cardstock I want to adhere, and I find that it holds great. You'll be seeing me use this more and more in videos, as I've recently been spending the past several weeks testing it out, and I'm really happy with it. Another dry adhesive that I like is the Altenew adhesive. So this is a similar product in that it puts down tiny dots of adhesive that you can rub away if you change your mind. It comes out easily, is small, lightweight, and fits in your hand nicely. It even has this little flip cap to close it. The adhesive comes out very smoothly from the applicator, just like the Gina K does, and you can see the little dots that are very similar. Again, the reason I like this adhesive that you can rub away if you change your mind is because it gives me the flexibility when I'm crafting to change my plans, move things around, or just reposition things. You only need a tiny bit to hold tight. The price is great on these. There are 3 in a pack. However, there are no refills available. Here you can see how I can carefully take my pieces apart, rub the adhesive away, and no one will ever know. I also find that I still use my Be Creative tape a lot. Now, there are many different widths of Be Creative tape, but I think I use the 1/8 inch option, which is the really skinny one on the left, the most. But you could get any of the different types. Now, talk about strong. These hold very well, so very little goes a long way. I find that I use these a lot, especially when making interactive cards, because you want to be able to adhere things that even when pulled and pushed on, it won't come undone. So here I'm adhering one piece of cardstock to another. The downfall of this adhesive is it holds so well that once you stick it down, you're kind of stuck there. You will tear your paper moving it, but sometimes that strong of adhesive is best. You could also use that liquid adhesive that I showed you before for a strong adhesion, but sometimes a tape is preferred. The reason I like the Be Creative tape over other options is the paper, the release paper that's on the other side of the tape, is very easy to remove. So you can quickly put your tape down, remove the release paper, and adhere your pieces together. There are also several adhesives that I recommend for creating dimension. I'll show you the different options and when I use them. The first is the Scotch 3M foam tape. Now this comes in a giant roll. In fact, I've already used some of this, and this is what a lot of people use. You can tear this and cut this easily into any size that you need. I usually use this behind sentiment strips or borders on my card. Now there is another foam tape that I've been using lately, testing it out, and really have been happy with the product. This is the Gina K foam tape. Now watch, I can squish this down and it pops right back up. And you can see that the other foam tape doesn't have that flexibility. The reason why that's an advantage is, say you have a piece of this Gina K foam tape on your card and it gets squashed when it goes through the mail. It'll just flatten and then pop right back up, but it won't cause crinkling and wrinkles on your cardstock. So your cardstock or your card that you create stays in good shape. You can see how you can easily tear this or cut this. But what's best about this particular foam tape is that it has that flexibility, as I mentioned. And say you like to do shaker cards. Sometimes you need your foam tape to go at an arch around a circle shaker window. Well, watch this. You can stretch it and form it to whatever shape you want. And you can't do that easily at all with the other foam tape. So this is another advantage. So I still do use both of these. I probably will reach for the Gina K foam tape more now because the price isn't that much different. It's a smaller roll that's easier to work with, and because it has the flexibility which will help with different features on my cards and help with making the cards stay put and in good shape when going through the mail. I also like to use foam squares. There are 2 different types that I've been using lately. One is the scrapbook adhesive foam squares that you see on the left. There's a couple sheets of these that come in a package, and you can see they're small little squares, and the release paper comes off them very easily. I use these behind little die cut shapes, little stamped images that I've cut out, and sometimes behind sentiment strips. Sometimes I like to cut these at a little diagonal so I end up with small little triangles, and you can see that it gives a nice amount of dimension. I've also been liking the Gina K foam squares. Check out this box. You can easily take one foam tab out at a time, which is great because then I don't have to worry about throwing it on my desk and having them stick everywhere. So these have slightly less dimension, but that's nice because you can stack two of them together if you want more dimension, or just go with one for a little bit of dimension. And by the way, I forgot to mention these Gina K foam squares on the right and the foam tape that I showed you earlier also come in black, which is nice to have both options. So when I'm wanting to do dimension behind, say, a small sentiment strip or border, I use foam tape. If I want to do dimension behind small die-cut images or hand-cut stamped images, I use little foam squares like these. However, if I want to put dimension behind a large panel to put on my card, I don't use any of these options because I fear that it'll get squished in the mail. Instead, I use white craft foam. You can see this craft foam has some dimension to it. It's inexpensive and I just cut it down to size. There's no adhesive on it. However, I put my own adhesive on, either using the Gina K Connect, the Be Creative tape, or the adhesive runners that I showed you earlier. So I cut this to be slightly smaller than this white cardstock. Because I use liquid adhesive, I can move it around till it's centered. Then I'll put adhesive on the other side and add that to my card. Now this entire white panel will have dimension behind it. If you click here on the top right, you can see a video that tells more about why I use craft foam for this. It gives an even raised dimension that won't get crushed in the mail, and it makes a huge difference. It's also a good price point, this white craft foam. You can also die cut it and use it behind die cuts if you want to. I buy a large pack, which I'll link to below, and cut it down to workable sizes so they're ready to go. I have a few videos coming up showing how to use the Tim Holtz mini foam adhesive sheets. I've been using these behind the scenes and they are fantastic. You can see what comes in a pack. There are 3 black and 3 white in a nice workable size. This has adhesive on both sides and you can die cut it beautifully. So say I want to die cut a white heart with some foam adhesive behind it. I trimmed my craft foam down. I'll remove some of the release paper and add it to white cardstock on one side. Then I'll trim that down. There are a few different ways to do this. I just find this to be the easiest and I can conserve my foam adhesive this way. So I have the cardstock facing up, the foam tape is behind it, and I run this through my die cut machine with my heart die. Even with this wafer thin die, I'm able to cut through that foam adhesive and it immediately pops back up with that nice dimension. It die cuts beautifully. Now I can remove the release paper from the back and add this onto my card wherever I want. And we have the white cardstock on top. This is a game changer for when you want to put any kind of dimension behind a die cut. It does give you a little bit of flexibility that you can move it if you remove it carefully, but it does hold nice and strong once you press it in place. And think about it, you can use that negative space there to create a shaker window because it has that nice dimension to it. Another thing I wanted to point out about these is there's a lot of dimension to these. These are pretty thick, so you really get a nice standout die cut when you use this product. I do feel I should mention that you can use the white craft foam that I showed you earlier for behind die cuts. This is how you could do that. You just take your piece of craft foam, put a piece of cardstock on top of it, and then your die and run it through the die cut machine. Now the die cut machine will temporarily flatten your foam a bit, but you can see it cut through both nicely, and now you can just glue them together. You could glue the layers together before die cutting, but I didn't want to wait for it to dry. So now I have a die cut with some dimension behind it, and I can just glue this onto my card. But you can see this isn't as much dimension as the Tim Holtz foam adhesive sheets I just showed you, but it is a different option. In many of my videos, I die cut multiple die cuts and stack them together with glue for that dimensional look. But now that I have this foam adhesive sheet from Tim Holtz, I think I'll be using those more. It really makes a big difference on your card to have that dimension behind a die cut because it creates that fun shadow. Lately, I've also enjoyed using the Tim Holtz adhesive sheets, and I'll use them in future videos. These are also a nice small workable size, and this allows you to put adhesive on the back of your cardstock before you die cut it, so the adhesive is already on there to add to your card. There's this easy to pull away release paper. You just pull it back, put your cardstock in place, trim around your cardstock, and then you have a piece of cardstock with adhesive on the back ready for die cutting. So this won't provide dimension, but it'll hold nicely on your card. So now I can run that through my die cut machine and we end up with a die cut sticker. So now I can easily add this onto my project. I like that it doesn't hold tight until you press it down, so you do have flexibility to move it, but it holds very nicely once pressed in place. These smaller pieces are very easy to work with and are excellent for word dies or small die cut shapes. Now, if you want to create a sticker from a larger die, I recommend the Stick It adhesive sheets. I've used these in videos many times. This is a very thin, double-sided adhesive that's great for die cutting. The pieces are large, so you need to trim them down quite a bit so that you can make it the right size for whatever die you're using. That's why if I'm doing smaller dies, I use the Tim Holtz adhesive sheets. And I really only use these for the bigger dies now. So again, I remove the release paper, press my cardstock in place, and trim the excess off. That puts adhesive on one side of the cardstock so that it's ready for die cutting. I find both this and the Tim Holtz adhesive sheets die cut beautifully. I keep all of my unused adhesive sheets in a Ziploc bag so that I don't lose them and can use them on future projects. So after die cutting this, I have adhesive on the back of my heart and I can put it in place. Now when using the Stick It adhesive, you really need to press it in place or it doesn't really stick well. That's a good thing because you can move it around and place it exactly where you want. And when you're certain of the position, you just press it down firmly with a bone folder or any other tool. Now before we move on, I did want to mention that throughout this video, I've been using my Tim Holtz snips. These are the mini scissors from Tim Holtz. I put them on my favorites list last year, but forgot to put them on my Crafty tools list this year. I wanted to mention them today because they are great scissors and they're perfect for cutting through adhesive, such as foam tape or foam squares, because the tips of these scissors are non-stick. I highly recommend these scissors if you don't have them. They're super strong and they cut great. So that wraps up my favorite adhesives of 2018. Now, I was going to go through my favorite papers of 2018, but I realized that all of my favorite papers, cardstocks, and envelopes are the exact same as what I shared in 2017, which is good news. These are tried and true products that I really like and I use often in videos. So instead of just going through it all again, I thought it would be best to link here in the top right corner to last year's video. In that video, I show all the different papers, when I like to use them, and I even go through an explanation on how to pick the right weight of cardstock. It's a really important conversation. So if you haven't watched that video from last year, please watch it now. All of the products are still my favorite this year. I will link all of these products, both the papers and adhesives, below in my YouTube description, but I'll also have a blog post with all of the products linked, lots of special discount codes, and a giveaway, so I encourage you to go check that out. I also wanted to thank you for spending 2018 with me. This has been a rough year for many of us, and let's pray that 2019 is better. I'm very thankful to have this crafty hobby as kind of a therapy for me, and I know many feel the same, so I appreciate all the time that you spend with me. In the middle here are a couple other videos that you might find helpful. Thanks again, have a great day, and we'll see you again very soon.